Ein Kopfhörer in modernem Design. In 1969, Beyerdynamic performed their first driver transplant. In the same year that the DT100 was released, they took their pre-existing DT480 driver and installed it into the same shell, advertising it as their sound juwel. Okay, it's likely a little bit more complicated than that, but I guess we'll never know which way around this process occurred. What came first, the driver or the egg? I like to think someone at Beyerdynamic was developing the DT100 and a light bulb moment led to the DT480. Let's take a look at the design. The original 1969 brochure from Beyerdynamic describes these as ein Juwel der Technik, eine neue Meisterleistung unserer Entwicklung, ein Kopfhörer im modernen Design für die anspruchsvollsten unter den Musikliebhabern. A headphone in modern design. As an 80s baby, I'm no expert on 60s design, but I strongly doubt this was at the peak of late 60s form. In the end, it's just marketing. I could design a headphone right now, and it would, by definition, be modern design. This copy is likely the later 1976 version, as it has a full vinyl headband cover instead of the two small pads of the 69 original. Anyhow, the new headband style with its angled curves, the large industrial rectangular cups, and detachable cable were all certainly a strong departure from most headphone designs of the past. In classic Beyerdynamic fashion, these were built to last forever. There isn't a single part of this headphone that feels like a weak point. Even the headband cover and ear pads are both soft and usable today, which is extremely impressive. Overall, the fit and feel of this headphone on the head, it's heavy. To ease this, the clamping pressure is quite high, so either way, it's not a very comfortable headphone. Anyone who has heard the DT480 will very likely have no need of sound impressions, as these do not stray far from the classic DT480 sound. Years of use have caused these pads to age inconsistently, and the left and right channels, while they appear to be poorly matched, are only caused to deviate from each other by the old pads. Sub-bass is of course almost non-existent. Do yourself a favor and don't use these with EDM or anything with a modern heavy beat. While the graph shows that there is bass that extends deeply, this is more of a testament to the driver's ability to make any kind of movement at those frequencies, and it is not an accurate representation of the sound performance, which is lacking energy and driving force in the lower register. EQing a healthy 20 decibel bass boost will only result in a distorted mess. Overall, the tone is somewhat balanced in the mid-range, but there is an obvious plastic, hollow resonance that puts a strong blemish on the timbre. Even after some tone correction, it does not go away. No doubt there are some materials and designs that are better suited to headphone manufacture than others, which would explain why we no longer see vinyl earpads and flat, solid plastic baffles in most modern designs. The treble is actually quite weak, with most of the dip in the 8 to 12 kHz region. When reading these kinds of graphs, one basic rule you can always follow is that any deviation greater than 10 decibels at any point in the frequency response will always result in an objectively incorrect or distasteful sound. The only case where treble being 20 decibels lower than the bulk of the lower mid-range is when the wearer has extreme treble sensitivity, which makes it rare enough to ignore for the most part. So, it is completely accurate to say that this is wrong and sounds bad. Strangely though, it does not give the impression of lack of detail, which is very likely a result from the other parts of the treble being more in line with the rest of the upper mids. If you want to slap on some modern plastic earpads, you want to grab a pair of EDT100S pads. Immediately, you might notice that channel matching is vastly improved, as both the new pads are uniform. It's now easy to get a perfect bass seal, and bass will audibly reach into sub-registers. Unfortunately, this also results in a heavier slam around 80 Hz, which does not sound good. If we ignore the upper bass and lower mids, the rest of the frequency response is actually more in line with a V-shaped neutral kind of tuning. After a quick and dirty fix with EQ APO, some of the issues are easier to ignore, but the lower bass is still very mushy sounding. There isn't a whole lot of definition there, and lower notes will get congested on more complex tracks. There is no escaping that this is a vintage closed back with resonance issues. I would, however, lean more towards recommending the Fabric EDT100T pads. With a very similar EQ profile, almost all the timbral issues are cleared up. Just like the modern Beyerdynamic DT770, letting the sound leak out through Fabric pads does wonders for the sense of space, air, and clarity. Aside from the lack of bass texture, they now sound acceptable. Then, you turn off the EQ and once again, you're reminded of the age of these headphones. Oof, that does not sound good. It's like listening to music out of a seashell with some cotton wool stuffed into it. For vintage Beyer enthusiasts, there's no denying the appeal of this unique crossover between the DT480 and DT100. For general vintage enthusiasts, the heavy weight and need for DSP correction might be a big turnoff. If you have the patience to squeeze every last bit of potential out of them, there is a performance worth enjoying at the end of that road, but for me personally, it doesn't possess enough charm to find a permanent place in my collection. If you've made it this far into the video, you obviously love headphones or the sound of my voice. With or without your support, I will continue to make these videos, but wouldn't it be so much better if you subscribed? Just imagine, almost weekly vintage headphone reviews. Take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.